So I'll go ahead and call us to order. It is 6:32. Um, let me double check it, right? There's no one else here but us. Okay, so no citizen comments. Approval of the minutes. Does anyone want to make a motion to approve the minutes from September 15th?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from August 16th.
I said August, I meant September, sorry.
September 16th, thank you.
15th.
15th, wow. I move to approve the minutes from September 15th.
Awesome, thank you.
I'll second.
All right, I will roll call us. We're going in alphabetical order. JC Herman, yes. Natalie Salee.
Yes.
Andrew Weimer.
Yes.
Awesome. Okay. Do we want to go through the agenda as is, or do we want to move anything around? I wanted to check with you all before we go forward. Does anyone have any opinions?
Some of the items, it seems a little bit like weird that we do it without everyone here. For instance, like the sharing, like you had us down to share why equity work and stuff like that.
I agree. And I also think in terms of the process of reviewing documents, I think that Elaine and hopefully Rogers, should be here for that. What about the basketball recommendations?
I would love to hear about what you and Aisha have been working on, and maybe we can talk about where you guys are at and start there.
Awesome. That sounds good. Andrew did quite a bit of it also.
Oh, great.
He wrote like the bulk of it. And I added a little bit. And then Aisha, I personally think is an awesome editor. Oh, hi, Julie.
Hello.
Nice to hear you.
Thanks,
sorry,
Maya.
I don't know if this meeting was a surprise to you. I realized I did not send out like a confirmation email to everybody.
No worries.
I appreciate you being here.
Yeah, I'll pull up the agenda so I could get minutes started. Did you start the meeting yet?
I did, and I stated the time at the beginning of the recording.
Okay. Great.
So you'll be able to. I did remember to do that.
Thanks.
Let's see. If you, yes.
If you want, we can just tell Julie quickly. We haven't done much. You started the meeting at 6:32. I moved to approve the minutes from September, and Andrew seconded it, and we all voted yes. And then that way you don't have to go back and pull up the video.
Great. 6:32. You nominate Andrew seconded. Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Natalie. Okay. Am I allowed to screen share?
You can be in one moment.
Oh, I think I can.
Okay.
Okay, this is what we have so far. You'll see there's some highlighted stuff there too. So Ridgeville Park District would like to issue a formal apology regarding the early removal of basketball hoops and acknowledge the impact on our community. RPD provides parks, programs, services, and facilities for a significant portion of South Evanston. Originally formed to provide for the specific needs of South Evanston, RPD is committed to the mission of serving all residents of the district, regardless of race, class, gender, sexuality, or ability. RPD is committed to advancing racial equity, diversity, and inclusion in all of its forms. We believe individual uniqueness and we embrace individual uniqueness and foster a culture of inclusion in an effort to create barrier-free access to our parks, programs, services, and facilities. Sharing space and facilities in a time of pandemic and in multi-use neighborhoods can be challenging. Indeed, COVID-19 reminded all of us how important park space and facilities can be for our health and well-being, and RPD strives to meet the challenge of ensuing equitable access for all residents of our diverse district. RPD acknowledges that instances of restricted accessibility, a lack of clarity about park policies, and disparities in noise complaints from neighbors have too often disproportionately impacted Black persons who utilize our basketball facilities and programming. We apologize for how this has negatively impacted individuals in the community and for failures to consistently live into our commitment to ensure equitable access to parks, programs, services, and facilities for all residents of the district. We highly value and welcome people to play basketball. We are committed to educating ourselves and our community about how disparities in complaints and surveillance of basketball in park spaces can perpetuate racism and taking proactive steps to address these issues. We are in the process of developing a racial equity lens to ensure that our policies and practices are inclusive and equitable. We will be making our basketball court policies more transparent, accessible, and consistent while celebrating basketball and its players at the Ridgeville Park District courts. And then the idea is that we would have some, good articles to attach to that. Any first impressions, Natalie, since you're the only one who hasn't seen this yet?
I'm curious, these bits that you have highlighted, why?
Okay, so this multi-use neighborhoods piece, I can't remember or maybe this is what it was originally. What we're trying to convey is the idea that like these basketball courts and the parks are right next to residential places.
Mm-hmm.
But how to word that so it fits in that sentence has been challenging.
Mm-hmm.
I
mean, I think it's a. Oh, I'm sorry, Andrew.
Well, I was just going to say, these red parts just had a functional use, which was we flagged them red after we made changes so that Aisha could know what to go back and look at without looking all through the document and comparing it. So that was why they're red.
Thank you.
I see. I mean, I think I understand what you're trying to say, and I'm, not sure I have a solution for you. I mean, I think it's really about proximity, right? Just the closeness. We have a unique district in that our 7 parks are very tightly woven into residential areas. So, if you're thinking about like a James Park, for example, there's much more space, and it's not necessarily, if you're playing basketball, you're not running the risk of like the ball knocking someone's window out of their apartment, like you would be at Reba, for example. So it's a proximity, and it's a, just the uniqueness of the parks in our particular district. But yeah, I'll think about that in terms of
things. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's it.
I thought you were finished. I'm sorry.
No, I am. I'm just
okay.
Saying
one things that we could. Oh, one things we could do there is just put an asterisk and a note at the bottom of an explanation. And I think what you just said, Natalie, is a great explanation of what we're talking about, and we wouldn't have to expand that paragraph, but we'll provide an explanation somewhere in this letter in case someone was curious about what that really meant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Does anybody know what the term is for zoning in terms of like, right, when the zoning is like you're allowed to have a park or a home or a business? Is that like multi-use zoning?
I don't
It
know.
might be helpful to use that same terminology. I don't know. I don't have an answer to that question. I'll look into it.
The word mixed use comes to mind, but I don't know if that's particularly a zoning language. It's more of it's perhaps a planning type of thing.
I mean, intimate, that comes to mind. We have intimate neighborhoods. Our parks are intimate. Something around that. Because that, I mean, that in and of itself is, that is like the source of the complaints when it has to do with noise, you know, regardless of the impetus behind the person that's making the complaint. Like that is, you know, the overarching theme is that these spaces are so close to residential homes, because they are such intimate parks and intimate courts that like that's the source of the noise complaints, is that, you know.
I really like, sorry, Natalie. I just wanted to say I really like that word intimate. And maybe we can do and then, you know, intimate neighborhoods and do the asterisk and do that explanation. Because I think intimate also speaks to like the difficulty of the relationship. Right. It's not just about the parks and the houses, it's about the people. And I feel like that word intimate reflects that more.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I'll think of, I love the asterisk idea too. I'll think of like, I'll type up, you know, just a little paragraph similar to what I said about the proximity and whatnot, and we can review that together. I think this is really, I think it's really lovely, and I think it addresses the things that we wanted to address. I think the biggest thing for me in this conversation is like the transparency piece, I think is a really big deal. I think just making sure that everybody, you know, neighbors who live in those buildings, basketball players, skateboarders, families that come to the park, everybody should understand our policy surrounding the basketball nets and like why they come up and down. And have, I think there should be, and we'll talk about this more when we're putting together the, you know, language for the signage, but, you know, a real understanding of why they come up and down, when they're going to come up and down, and if there's a question or a concern, how to reach the right people to talk about that. I think that information is all, and the welcome piece, the piece that like, we want you to be here playing. I guess part of me also, because I am thinking about everybody all the time, all the people all the time. You know, some of the noise complaints, the people that with the noise complaints, like, you know, they have valid complaints, and we can't ignore them either. And I think creating an outlet for them to also communicate with us and be able to explain to them full transparency. This is when they come up and down. This is why. This is how you get a hold of us. Just to kind of take all the guesswork out of it, and hopefully that will create a more peaceful union between, you know, the renters or homeowners and the people who are, you know, taking advantage of our courts.
When you were speaking, Natalie, one of the things that I thought about that is likely missing from this is a statement about if people have questions now about this, where do they go? Who and where can they find additional information to connect to someone or a specific point person? And that's something that we should include here as well, so that there again is that through line and a way to create communication and connection.
Yeah. Yeah. Something else that has stood out for me from the beginning, and I'm so grateful that that gentleman reached out to us through Facebook to talk about it, is we've been having conversations about basketball courts long before I got there, and the noise and the proximity and everything else. And I could never fully wrap my brain around why it was a race issue. I hear what people are saying, but it never really sunk into me what was underneath that. And I'm so grateful that he shared those resources to read about the, you know, the perceived racism that comes along with basketball courts and people who play basketball. And I think that's such valuable information. And I love that you've left room here to include some resources and information for people, you know, like me, who may not fully get it, to read, because it makes so much sense and is, I think, such an important piece of, you know, creating an equitable park. So I'm glad you included that space for that as well.
I have just kind of one question. I think it's kind of going along with the flow of this conversation, is in informing people and the transparency about our policies. We've also in this explicitly committed to educating not only ourselves, but our community about disparities, essentially how racism is at play in surveillance and complaints about basketball too often. And so I guess I'm curious, we're making this commitment. What's that going to look like for us? How are we going to program this, essentially, so that we are not just slapping a few articles on a press release, but we're actually educating ourselves and the community. I don't know. That's not to any one person, but it's also kind of like holding our feet to the fire. How are we really planning on bringing this to life in a meaningful way?
I think just some, we had talked about this last time, and some of this stuff had been in place before, but, for many, many years, we've done a basketball tournament in the summertime. I think, bringing that back next summer, I think is a good way to start. I'm hoping there's other, thoughts or ideas about how to do some kind of basketball programming throughout the year. Either separately or even like maybe for our camps, engage our youth in the parks team and some of that stuff too, as a way to maybe celebrate it within the community in kind of a broader, more public sense. But individually as like staff and board, I think ideally everybody would read these articles and we would have a conversation about it and talk about it. If that's something that can come up, those examples, we're going to talk later about continued education or training for everybody. So like if that can be kind of a staple within our training guides for everyone, I think that would be great. Those are just some things off the top of my head.
Yeah, and I really like that idea, Natalie, of because as I recall, we've been talking about developing our own training internal and so that could become a key part of that. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, I think, we talk about, I feel like this comes up in like various workshops and conferences and things I go to when I'm doing any kind of EDI work or learning workshop, is like, and because I'm the program director, like I think a lot about equity within programs, and it's harder for me to wrap my brain around equity in facilities for like the park spaces and facilities, and like what does that mean and look like? And I think this is a perfect example of that. Talking about equity in like our outdoor basketball court space, this is something that we can change and make better and like help the community understand and be transparent about. So that's really exciting. Like we talk and we make sure that like when we're putting in new play circuits and we're like wood chipping it, like that they're accessible wood chips. There's items within our play circuits for like kids in wheelchairs to access, and like different just accessibility points and all of that kind of stuff. But I think this is another really great example of like how to make our park equitable, the space itself. So I think, yeah, I think this within like a internal training session, something that we develop in-house, I think will be really, really, you know, crucial for everybody.
I also really liked your idea of like, you know, having an opportunity to talk about the articles. I mean, I know back when you had the book clubs, and even when, you know, there were books that are about, you know, race and culture, people weren't really interested, but maybe it's worth giving another shot. And that could be something that we divvy up in terms of the committee of who would host it. So that wouldn't be something that would add it to your program director plate. That, you know, we can have, you know, and it would not just like an open forum conversation, but maybe, you know, like a bit of an agenda of, you know, what we're going to talk about when, in respect to the article. And on that same note, I mean, I know I tend to be a little bit of a dreamer, but like, wouldn't it be really cool if there was, and I don't know who it would be, but if there was a partner organization where we could have Ridgeville host like an art show that's related to basketball and all the things that go along with it. Like, yeah. I feel like it would be so cool to see these like multimedia, whether it's like photography or, you know, painting, drawings. You know, kids are so into like videos and stuff. I think of Olin, and you know what he's done for the park district in terms of videos. And maybe that would be a really cool way to do it. But again, that would be an undertaking that would be too big, clearly, to put on your plate. We would have to find somebody who like would know how to do that, or a partner organization.
I mean, I have those partners. I know who to call. we were supposed to host the Anti-Racist AF art festival in 2020, and we had to cancel because of COVID. But I know Fuchsia, that's definitely something that she has been passionate about. It's not specific to basketball, but it's, you know, but what she had planned was a really cool festival. So I think she'd be a great person to partner with for something like that, or Art Makers Outpost would be great. I've worked with them in various, you know, ways over time. So yeah, that's an achievable dream, JC.
Look, I thought of one. I thought of what we can actually do, Natalie.
Yeah,
I take it back. We've got a couple things. We've got a whole bunch of kids from Oakton at the half-day workshops now. That took a little while of figuring, but we got that one done too.
Yeah. I think that's a really cool idea.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm not short on partners. That's my favorite thing to do. I like to collect partners in all different ways to do all kinds of cool stuff like that. So
well, and along those lines, I was thinking about how, right, like Pat Effian was speaking to me, you know, like in my thoughts the other day. And one of the things that I realized is, you know, we're doing all these things, but nobody who plays on the basketball courts has been present in any of these conversations. Mm-hmm. So maybe like we can figure out how we can invite those voices in. I don't know if we want to do like a town hall before the weather gets super terrible and we have to be, you know, like inside, or, you know, I'm not on social media, but I don't know how many of those people are, you know, connected to Ridgeville on, you know, Facebook and such. But finding a way so that the people who are actually using the courts get to come have their voices heard too.
Yeah, I mean, it can be as simple as like, if I could create like a survey or something on WooFoo, I could post signs down there with like a QR code. And folks could, you know, if they wanted to take the survey, there could be an incentive for taking the survey.
I have lots of
mean,
Halloween candy I could share.
yeah. I mean, when we were doing this with the skaters, we were just like, I would just go down to the skate area and just like make people talk to me.
You're
and
really
it was,
good at that though. People really like you.
I mean, they were very kind. They, but you know, but it was good. It was good stuff we were talking about. It was like, what kind of equipment would you like? Like, we've got a budget for it now, and like, what kind of things would you like to see in the space? So, you know, it was exciting conversations. I feel like it would be the same, you know, what we're talking about with the basketball courts. Like, what are some fun things that you would be interested in doing? You know, whatever we decide that survey is, or what those questions are, or how we want to engage them, can definitely do that.
Because of the long-standing history of issues in this area, and because of what it's tied to and what it can mean in that space, being really intentional with the questions to make sure that whatever the response is something that can actually happen as a result of the responses there. And I do like the idea of going the extra step of really trying to make it personal and really engaging with people face to face, or in the place where they feel, or space where they feel most comfortable in the park, in order to ask them about their experience and their ability to, you know, there's a level of trust that you have to have in order to give information and give your ideas and to connect. And so, because we likely also don't know the perspective of people who play basketball in the park and what their experience has been, I think making sure that we're taking those extra steps will be really important in how you navigate what you do.
Yeah. I think Andrew's question too about how we're going to educate ourselves in-house and whatnot, I think that piece should probably also be in this statement. Include like what our next steps are as a RPD team to, you know, continue learning about this, and you know, I think holding ourselves responsible, and at least even if we don't know exactly how we're going to do it, I think, you know, making some decisions about what we would like to do and implementing that, and then, you know, committing to it within the statement, I think would be probably good.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a great addition. I'm really excited about this. I think we have some really good ideas.
So what's the next step? Are we going to put together language for the sign? I feel like the board will want that.
Yes.
Like a pretty complete draft of what we would like the signage to say. So that they can, you know, approve or make their edits or whatever. Should we do that within our meeting, or should we do that outside of the meeting, JC?
I personally feel, I mean, that might be something that's a little bit easier, since it's, you know, essentially just taking bullet points and turning them into sentences. Like, we essentially know what needs to be communicated. It's just making it make sense. But I feel like in general, that sort of stuff works better in smaller groups, just because of the wordsmithing.
Do you want me to make one as a template based on, I'm gonna work off the template that we have for our skate signs, because I helped put those together, and those seem to be embraced with open arms. So I'll use that as a starting off point to bring to the REDI committee meeting.
That would be fantastic. Oh, sorry.
And Andrew was raising his hand as well.
Yeah, so just to ask, so if we go to making the signs straight away, we've also committed in this to applying a racial equity lens to our policies. And so my concern is that if we go to signs before we've actually applied that lens, that we might be doing work that might need to be redone. So does that mean we're making a commit as the REDI committee to look at these policies together through a racial equity lens. And that would seem to be a next step to me before we got to signage. Am I wrong about that?
That, that's a question that I don't know has been asked. Is there like official park district policy around any of this?
Yeah.
What?
It,
Sorry, go ahead.
you mean about the courts and the nets?
Yeah, like I know there's been, things that have been discussed at board meetings, and like, the rules have wiggled.
Mm-hmm.
What's on paper?
So that kind of stuff will show up in our minutes. And I am 99% sure that the last time this came up at a board meeting, they did vote on the nets being up from 9 to 9. So being up during park hours. I'm pretty sure that happened.
There's nothing like in the charter or like anything along those lines that you know of? Not the charter, like in the
ordinance
policy.
In the ordinance. That's what I'm talking about.
Yes, I don't believe so. So things will be added to our ordinance in different ways. Sometimes our attorney will draft a whole new ordinance and it will be voted upon and then like kind of tacked on to the existing ordinance as an addendum. Or they'll make changes to the verbiage within the ordinances, vote on that verbiage change, and then it will be like struck and like filled in the what's it called? The outside. There's a word. Whatever.
I know you
within
mean.
the document. Also, sometimes things get passed or voted on in a meeting, and the minutes are then added to the ordinance as an addendum. So I believe that this particular issue, when it came up, I think in 2018, 19, was voted on in a meeting.
Yes, it was. Okay. Wow, that's really confusing. Okay.
It is very confusing. Yeah.
Okay. But I also, Andrew, I agree with you. I think I don't know if we want to like come up with a rough draft so that we can have something to bring to people if we have an opportunity to speak to them. And not finalize anything until we have and I keep saying hopefully, right? Because I'm generally a very optimistic person. But I feel like every time we've tried to reach out, it hasn't been all that successful. I do just want to say, as a little side note, I was very excited at my half day camp the other day. The skate park had come up. And one of the kids said that she didn't notice that a skate park had been built there. And I explained to her about the kids who came to the board meetings to ask for the skate park and how like they were a big push for it to happen. And then she knew the kids that came to the board meeting. And it was just really neat to have this opportunity to be like, yeah, you want something from the park district? I can let you know how to ask for it. Like you can come to a board meeting, you can call Natalie. And she was looking at me like she pointed at the play equipment and goes, we could pick that. And I said, there was a vote for the Reba one not that long. And she was like,
they sure can.
Right? It was a really wonderful moment to have had with a younger person than me.
Yes, engage your community at
right?
all ages.
Yeah,
love it.
I know, it was exciting. So I'm sorry for that digression. But does that sound like a good plan? Like maybe we can come up with a rough draft for the sign while we're hopefully, trying to engage people to find out how they feel about all this.
Yeah, I will do that. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say, I do think it's important for people to have some idea of what you're talking about when you go to them, so that they are not starting off from just a blank canvas or a blank slate.
I'll put it together, JC.
Okay.
And the language, you'll see, like it's like there's not a whole lot of there's not a lot of the language is pretty direct and succinct and welcoming. But yes, we should obviously, all of these things should happen through an equity lens. So if we need to figure that out before we actually take it to the board, you know, and like break it down as a committee, then that's fine. But I'll create like a jumping off point.
Awesome. If there's anything that I can do to help you with that, let me know. Also, as a very quick side note, that graffiti that I told you about has been cleaned up already. Okay, sorry, I had to get that in my notes. Do we want to talk about that next red chunk?
I think the question there was whether or not to include park neighbors, from park neighbors.
Yeah, my question was, and most of my questions were about making sure that the language that we're using is consistent with the reality of what was actually happening. So checking to make sure that this statement is accurate before sending it out to the public.
I mean, Natalie, I feel like you could probably speak the most to whether or not you feel like that's an accurate statement from the calls that you've gotten. I will say, and I don't know if it's appropriate to put it because it's, you know, maybe not a part of the apology. But I think an important point to at the very least note right now is that a lot of the time the noise complaints are coming after hours. Right, like
They are.
After the park is not supposed to be being used anymore.
The noise complaints are coming from two things. One, use of the space outside of open park hours, and foul language being used. Those are the two things that we get calls about.
But so again, I don't know if it's if somebody was apologizing to me and, you know, put those things in there, I would almost feel like that was an excuse and trying to like cover things. So I don't know if it's appropriate to acknowledge that in this statement. I think, you know, we had talked, Natalie, about that's part of the purpose of the signage, right? Like the signage is to help the neighbors in hopes that people will take that signage seriously of like, please don't play after hours, like it bothers the neighbors, right? Like, I don't know how you all feel about it.
I guess, yeah. I don't know. I have a hard time like, I don't know how to be succinct and, you know, I guess transparent about what the specific noise complaints are without negative impacts to all parties, I guess. I don't know how to, I don't know. I don't know how to create like, and I feel like I think the sentence is fine as it is, but I guess just like in reality or in practice, it's hard to create a space where people, like the neighbors who are living there are not upset about noise after hours or about like bad language being used without like making the people who are playing basketball feel bad about that. And I don't know how to I don't know how to say what this says without the people making noise complaints not feel bad about making noise complaints. You know what I mean?
I absolutely know what you mean. I feel the same way.
Like I can see a few of the people that have called about noise complaints reading that particular sentence and feeling like the park district is accusing them of racism when they were calling to complain about basketball at 11 o'clock at night. You know what I mean? Or like noise at 11 o'clock at night. Not to say that this isn't important, and I think this perspective is important, and people may, like me before, like didn't understand the impact of those noise complaints and you know, the disparities surrounding basketball play in general. I think that's important for them to know, but that's just something that pops up for me. It's like, how do we say the thing we need to say so that both parties understand and feel heard and welcome?
I mean, would it be okay to put a sentence, right? So after it says who utilize our basketball facilities and programming, we put in a sentence that's something along the lines of, we also understand that it can be disruptive to neighbors when park facilities are being used after hours. Or the other thought that I had was that, we think about the purpose of each mode of communication that we're using, and that this mode of communication is to apologize specifically for this part of all the basketball stuff. And then, the signs and the reaching out to the basketball players themselves becomes the piece to help alleviate some of that after hours playing in the neighborhood.
I think the intention of all of this is to help everyone understand how to navigate the boundaries of this space. And because those boundaries are not clear, and even the boundaries that were clear were inconsistent, that it's created a situation where everyone is being put in a situation to allow something like this to happen and to continue to happen. And so what's stated here is, it seems like just a clear statement of what has happened, that as a result of that, this is what has happened in this community. And the point of the apology is to apologize about creating the conditions for that to happen. And then now moving forward to create different conditions to where everyone can have a community that everyone understands the boundaries and the expectations for how to use this space and how to coexist in the space.
I will say, I think some of that is missing from this. Like, I think that I read this and it feels more like an apology and a statement to the people who are using the basketball courts specifically. Like, I don't know that it acknowledges people who live in the neighborhood who are, dealing with noise at 11 o'clock at night. There's not a sense of like unity, I guess. I think that the piece that Ridgeville is apologizing for is creating that condition with, not with lack of transparency or information surrounding why we're doing the things that we're doing. And I think, we have to take ownership of that and be clear about our next steps and what we're going to do to change it. But the rest of it, I think, I guess that sense of like unity and creating, a peaceful space for all parties, I don't necessarily get that from this statement.
I guess the one piece I just toss out here, and I don't want to like, I think we've named that there are some like legitimate noise complaints, but I think that even the use of profanity and the perceptions of the use of profanity themselves are probably racialized. And I'm pretty certain that we can find studies that will support that. And so, yeah, so I'm I don't know. I'll just name that in the space. I don't know what else I want to say at the moment, but just to name that.
Yeah, I think that we have to state specifically what is happening, even if so it's kind of like there's intention and there's impact. Whether or not the intention is the intention, the impact is the impact. And this is what has happened as a result of what's going on in this community. And part of our role and the role of RPD is to make sure that we're addressing equity issues, whether or not a community is aware that, or that was the intention of it.
What if we put in in that last paragraph, if we are a little more explicit about the signage that's going up, and we have that neighborhood piece included in the signage in terms of like, or not in the signage, but like in reference to the signage of, you know, like we also have plans of making sure that it is clear when parks are open and when they're closed, so that players and neighbors alike can, you know what the rules and expectations around the courts will be moving forward. Does that fit in better, or do you feel like it just shouldn't be included at all?
I don't know if, and this is just, I don't know if we need to get so specific about what the sign will exactly say versus the intention of what the signage is there to do for the community. And the purpose of it is it serves the purpose for people who are playing basketball and people who feel from complaints, legitimate complaints, how they should experience the park when people are playing basketball, and what they should expect or anticipate in the environment. So instead of saying the signs will say X, Y, and Z, the purpose of why there will be signage.
It's, if I can, I think this complements what Aisha just said. Is right, the statement is a starting point. And I think when I brought up the bit a while back about education, my point wasn't so much, you know, we have to have a plan in place right now, but as much as just I'm just already beginning to think of how we're keeping ourselves honest about this statement and living into it. And so my concern is if we put this off too long and too far and make sure and have everything perfect, right, that kind of defeats the process of starting a conversation and then moving forward in healthy ways. So if I send us down a trajectory of you know, having a detailed plan in place for everything, then I didn't mean to do that.
No, I think I appreciate that that explanation.
Natalie, you look like you were going to say something. I was going to say something, but go ahead.
No, I don't want to say it. This is just kind of a general question, I guess. Because we're recommending something to the board, and the board ultimately decides. And I have a pretty good idea of how the conversation will go. How much do we take into consideration that as we're putting something like this together? Like, And it's perfectly fine as the answer if the answer is not at all. I'm just curious, like, because we want to be successful, right? And get it done. That's just something I was thinking about.
I think this committee also has to sort of stay true to the integrity of the purpose of it. And so this recommendation that we make has to align with our purpose and goal of directing the board in the direction of being having this lens. And at sometimes that may feel like providing a viewpoint that people may have not been aware of. And so that's our attention and our driver. And the board has the responsibility to respond to that and to then to either take those recommendations or make the decision that they're not. And the hope is that if the decision is not to take the recommendation, that there's space for us to hear the why of it and to have conversation and discussion to help move them along.
Okay. Okay, cool. I think I'm thinking back over the past year and like even the whole consultancy process, you know, starting from like last August, you know, over a year ago, and going back and forth and back and forth. And like, I'm thinking, you know, as we prepare to take this to the board, we do have an equity lens that's in place. They have passed it. Like that's a document that exists and is acknowledged by the board. And I feel like maybe the best way to deliver this recommendation is to say, okay, here's a message we received. Here's our equity lens. Here's the work that we've done to create this recommendation for you. So they understand the why, the what, and the how. And by giving them like almost like a little packet, you know, to review, I think would set us on the right foot just going right into it. Does that make sense, JC?
Yes. Yeah. I just want to make sure I got it. I got the order right. Let them know that the message was received. We use the equity lens, and then that's how we came up with the recommendation.
Yeah, it's like exactly how you and Aisha talked about like putting your reports together for the board, right? Like the way that you are outlining those items now. I think delivering this whole issue and recommendation to them in a similar way, like from top to bottom. Here's what happened. Here's what we did. Here's the recommendation, so you know why.
So here's my next question. What exactly is it that we have to ask the board permission for? Like, do we have to ask the board permission to put the QR codes down at the basketball courts and do a survey? Do we have to ask permission to, I know in terms of like the statement, the board has to vote on that. But in terms of like us connecting with the community, do we have to go through them first?
Oh, I'm sorry, Andrew, go ahead.
Well, can I go back to where we were just for 1 sec? I hate to like
no,
stick here, but I did want to say something about the previous, and I really appreciate Aisha's response, which is very relational and like we're on a journey. We're going to keep talking. I think that JC and I were talking about this while we were writing this. We're very aware, right, that perhaps this may not make it through, and I think that I really appreciate Aisha's comments. You know, we have to have integrity in this work here. I'm not here for the board of commissioners. I'm here for my community and my people, and so I think there's an element of our role is also kind of essentially, I don't know if oversight's the right word, but holding accountable. And you know, it would be really disappointing to me. I just have to name in this space that it would be, I'm really glad we're working through this in a public way right here. There's going to be a record. And it would be very disappointing to me if the board isn't willing to take this, you know, really consider putting this out. Because to me, it speaks to a fundamental then kind of disingenuousness about the sort of alleged commitment to racial equity, diversity, and inclusion. And so, so I'll be very curious what's going to happen. And you know, but that you know, our integrity really matters in how we approach this.
I do. Thank you, Andrew. I appreciate you going back to that. We had, you know, we had a good conversation about even if there is the back and forth, right, that gives the community an opportunity to see where the board stands and what they're thinking. And I think particularly coming into an election year, I think that's an important thing for our community to know, is who's behind this and who isn't. Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate you going back to that, Andrew. I agree. We have to present to them what we think is best, not what we think they're gonna accept. And this might end up being a lot of back and forth. But they can also just take what we did and edit it themselves too. Like they don't necessarily have to put it back through us, but that also says something, in my opinion, if that was the choice they would make.
JC, to answer your question about what we need board approval for. So if we're spending money, or we want to spend money, which the signs will cost money, they would have to approve that purchase. They will probably want to, don't do that. Sorry, my cat. They'll want to probably sign off on like what the signs say, although I don't know that we necessarily need, I don't know if they need to vote on that or if it can just be like a all in favor type thing. And then anything that's like a public statement on behalf of Ridgeville Park District. So if I'm taking this statement and I'm sending it out in an email or posting it, or, you know, making flyers, and it's signed essentially the Ridgeville Park District, then we'll need their approval for that. In terms of like outreach and communicating with basketball players, I can do that. I do that every day anyway. You know, I go out in the parks and talk to people. So that making surveys, I can do all that. That's all part of my job. So I don't need any further blessing to do that stuff.
Excellent. Thank you for clarifying that. That makes a lot of sense. Unlike a lot of this.
I do think one of the pieces we do want to be conscious and aware of is the relationship between this committee and the board, because I think that's what's underlying this question about the navigation of how, you know, how do we make a recommendation, or what will the response be from the board? And yes, that's part of the work that needs to happen, is to build and strengthen the relationship of the connection between this committee and the board. We do have to have opportunities to speak to the board in order to actually do that. But that's one of the pieces that we have to be working on and working towards, is really strengthening that on both ends, strengthening that relationship and being clear about the relationship as well.
Thank you for saying that, Aisha. That yes, that is where my question was born from.
Okay, so on that note, is our plan to present something? I don't feel like we can pull this together by next week's meeting, right? Like to get a packet in their hands. Today's Thursday, right? Like it's a week away. Do we have this be a part of the December? Or so then we can give them time to have the information at least a week ahead of the board meeting for them to be able to look at it? We're just gonna try to move through what we can now.
with where we are in the year weather-wise, this is a bad week to make an example of this because we've had such beautiful weather, but the courts are going to be less and less used. And I don't want to stall this conversation. You know, as Andrew had pointed out earlier, I think it's important to continue it and to, you know, get on top of this now. But that being said, if signage is made, it's probably not going to be able to be made and put out until the spring, or like at least towards the end of winter, just for logistical reasons. So we do have some time if we want to refine this a bit. I think if we want to take it to the December meeting, or we could put together what we have now, not as a recommendation yet, but just as an update on where we're at, to give them kind of so they can play catch up a bit and know, you know, what's coming down the pipeline in terms of recommendations from us and what we've been talking about.
So give it to them, not as an official recommendation, but like, here's where we're at with this.
Yeah, as an update, and maybe an opportunity to invite them to a REDI meeting and say, you know, if you'd like to be a part of this discussion, or at least listen in, you know, and speak at the top of the meeting about some thoughts you have, that might be a nice thing to do.
I was just going to throw out as well that I really appreciate Lane's perspective. I think especially as a lawyer, that her perspective is really important in this committee. And you know, Natalie, it's really lovely that you shared, right, that this is a seasonal thing, and we have a season now where we can kind of take our time and get this done right and get situated for the spring. And then the other bit as well is that, back to Aisha's comment about relationship building, is this is horrible. Is it Michael Rogers? Rogers' first name. It's always Rogers on his Zoom, so I can't remember what his Matt. Sorry. So Matt is on this committee, and that would be one way of dipping our toe in the pool and finding out what the temperature is, as well as if, you know, other folk could come as well. So so this would seem to it would help the relational stuff if we could look at it one more time.
Yeah.
Okay, so then, sorry, go ahead.
I'm just thinking because Andrew mentioned Matt. I don't know if maybe you should send him an email. He made it clear in October he will not be participating virtually in meetings any longer. So I don't know if that includes REDI meetings. I don't know if you wanted to send him an email maybe to get some clarification on that. Because if we're going to continue to meet virtually, and he's not able to do that, we might need to ask a different commissioner to join.
I'll reach out to Commissioner Anton again, regardless.
You might text her, JC. I don't know if I've given you her number, but I can.
No, it's email. I'm guessing it probably just went to spam.
Yeah, I can give you her her phone number.
That would be great.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
She's very excited to do stuff. I took her on a park tour last Friday. She's chomping at the bit to get in there and do some stuff. So I think she'd probably be excited about the invitation to join.
Awesome. That's fantastic. I'm excited to get to know her a little better. Okay, so I want to get our trajectory kind of mapped out a little bit. So, and when I say immediately, I mean that in quotation marks. I don't mean like tomorrow morning I'm gonna wake up and like start working on surveys right away, but like essentially we can get like right away, we can get the surveys out to the basketball courts. And then for the December board meeting, I'll bring this statement as it stands. Right?
For the surveys, JC, we should talk about what's on the survey. maybe at the
Yes.
next REDI meeting.
And I put a note in that about the suggestion of intimate instead of multi-use. So one word might be changed.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm taking all my notes on paper right now. Um, um,
As well, we could go, Aisha noted that we need to have a next, how do people engage if there are issues? So that little bit could be added as well prior to
Yes.
next meeting.
Let me see. I think there was something else. Oh, and then like a statement about what the next steps are going to be was the other piece.
Like what we're doing in-house to educate ourselves. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. And then Natalie, like you were saying, we can the surveys, right? Because we're meeting again in 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
We can put those together at the next meeting.
Mm-hmm. Maybe we should all come with some thoughts on that.
Yes. Come prepared with some either like resources or, you know, questions or whatever.
If I will volunteer for this, if everybody wants to email me questions that they would like on the survey or they think belong on the survey, chances are there's going to be a lot of overlap. So then I will condense those into all of our ideas. And then that way that's what we can use as a reference when we discuss it in 2 weeks. Is that okay?
That sounds good.
Okay. Julie, is Julie still around?
Yes.
Yep, I'm taking
Hey,
notes.
Julie. Oh,
Hello.
okay. If you don't mind maybe emailing everybody and letting them know to send me their survey questions for the basketball court, for basketball players regarding the basketball court. Should we talk also just to clarify what the goal is of the survey? Like, what do we want to know generally speaking, or should we all just come up with questions that we would personally like to know from our basketball friends? Is a survey like to create programming to, like, you know, improve court access, to improve relationships? Like, what is the goal of the survey, or all of the above?
Yeah, I think that was a question I had in the back of my mind, which is typically in research, you determine the questions before you determine how you're going to capture the data. And so I'm not clear on what data we need. It seemed to be from previous comments about related to experience and how that could be enhanced. Is that right? I can come up with questions with that as long as I have clarity.
I do. I think we want, I mean, I think there should be, you know, a couple questions about programming, access, but I think we also want to get the root specifically for the REDI committee for this purpose, I think, is to find out what people's experience has been. And then, you know, we can, when we talk about it more, we can see, you know, how explicit we want to be in those questions.
Do we also want to collect demographic information in the survey?
I think we should. I think we should at least ask. Right, because I think knowing the difference between, like, you know, a 12-year-old white looking female child is going to be very different, right, from the experience of an older Black man. I think that demographic information, I think, is going to be pretty important.
Okay.
And I also think that there should be an invitation, for some face to face too, like see if people are interested in getting together and having some live conversations about it. Does that feel like some good parameters?
Like do a town hall.
I would really like to, right? Like that was something that hasn't gotten done at all in terms of when we started all this. And I think that doing it around the basketball courts, I think would be a really a great opportunity.
Okay.
I wonder if perhaps as opposed to a town hall, I think the mode that comes to my mind is a listening session. Is that more accurately describe what we're talking about than a town hall?
Can you describe what you mean by a listening session?
Well, when I think of a town hall, I don't know if there's a formal definition, but it often involves a speaker, sharing significant amounts of data or information,
Okay.
or multiple speakers, whereas a listening session would be centered on receiving information, on intake of perspectives. I don't know. Is that it? Maybe we're just like talking past each other, and but
No, thank you. Thank you for clarifying that, because I was thinking of the second one that you mentioned where people could come and share their experiences and we can have a little bit more of a conversation. I mean, I would love to have, if we were able to find a speaker to come, but I think that would be a separate event, right? Like I would like to hear about people's experience in the parks. That's what I would like to do.
I'm calling it a town hall because that's what Pat, oh, I'm sorry.
I was going to say, I think it's also important that it is a space for people to ask questions and to hear from the park district as well, so that it's not just about collecting from the population, that it's also, again, has that relational component where you're also getting something. And sharing about their experience could be enough, but there also should be something that is being offered to them in the form of either information or access.
Yes, thank you. I do. I agree, because I'm assuming anyone who's going to want to come share their experience is probably going to also come with some questions to help understand why they had those experiences in the first place. Okay. So yeah, I think some back and forth sharing, not so much like, having somebody guide the conversation with information. Hold on. Okay, so what I have as a list for things that we're working towards, it's the statement, it's the surveys, it's the sharing of info between the community and the park district, possibility of doing like the discussion of articles, an art show. Am I missing anything in terms of like our long trajectory? Not that we're doing all of this in this very moment, but like, so when I go talk to the board.
The signage.
Signage, thank you. I knew.
You just let them know we're working on that.
Okay, signage. Am I missing anything else? Okay. In terms of the statement, as Andrew had pointed out, and I think he might have stepped away for a little bit with bedtime. But there are those little changes in terms of putting in intimate neighborhoods. So maybe if you all feel comfortable, I can, make some of those edits. And since we're not officially recommending it to the board, we'll still have some room for editing after that. But I can just fix those few things that we had kind of pinpointed that we wanted to change. Does that feel okay?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll double check with Andrew too, just in case he's not able to hear us right now. Okay. Is there anything else on the courts before we move on to anything else? Is that good for that? Okay.
JC, you might also mention to them, to the board, as you're updating them, that we intend to bring back the basketball tournament this summer.
Okay. I think that we should table talking about why we're doing equity work because Elaine's not here and Rogers isn't here. I always forget. We can just say we're tabling it. We don't have to vote, right?
That's right.
Okay. I feel the same way for process for reviewing the documents, reviewing ordinance. I think the next one that we should go to and then table practice rewriting a part of the ordinance. The assessing need for further training. I don't know if maybe Aisha wants to update you all a little bit more, but she's putting together something for us.
I am. So with the assessing the need for further training, the need exists, and it will always exist, the need for further training. And so what I'm putting together is something that, I mean, the hope is for the committee and the board to go through this experience where it is grounding everyone in, again, in the terminology that has been shared with the public, but also other key terms, ideas, and concepts to be aware of when you're operating in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space. And then also trying to ground those terms in understanding who we are, and then also the roles that we carry in the community. So that's the intention of the training, is to be reflexive, but also to be providing some concrete information that people can hold on to and attach to who they are as individuals, but also who they are as we operate in this space. The intention of the training is also to talk about how to create the conditions to have conversations that might be or feel uncomfortable or have dynamics that are connected to diversity and equity and inclusion that might be a challenge at some times. And then actually going through that process to try to attempt to create that space for the committee and the board in our joint and collaborative work together. So that's the intention for training, at least this first round. And depending on the length of it, it might just be, divided up into different sessions.
Okay.
Aisha, is the plan for that to be for the committee and the board together at the same time?
That was the initial intention. However, in conversation with JC, I shared that if that isn't able to be easily accomplished, it could happen in separate sessions as well. Because it needs to happen. So the intention is for it to be together, but in order for it to continue to move forward, to make sure that everyone's getting what they need, there's also the option for it to be separate.
Just a couple quick things. So if the board, if more than 2 board members are participating in a training together, it will need to be in a public forum. Mm-hmm. Anytime, there's a quorum, it has to be. So I need to post about that 48 hours in advance, which obviously we'll know, but just mm-hmm. saying that out loud. what, oh, I was also going to say, I would love for staff to be included in this if it's possible. If I would love for all of us to do it. And I had one more thing I was thinking of and now I forgot. We'll leave it at that. It'll creep back in. Oh, I remember. Okay, sorry. So part of our equity charter says that all new incoming commissioners, committee members, and staff have to go through an equity training. So right now, the goal is for me to set up equity trainings with all of those individuals through the YW. And I need to check again, but last time I checked, they had not released their workshops yet. So my question is, everyone needs to do this, right? Not just like new incoming members. Like we all, whether we've gone through equity training with Pat or not, or through the Y or not, like we all need to do this onboarding together, right? Oh, great. Okay.
Yeah, this is the setting the common ground. And the content that will be developed can be used in the future for new people who come on board. The question would be about how it's delivered as new people come on board. But the intention of this is for it to be content that can be used again with the purpose of this is our common language, this is our common ground, and this is what's important for all of us to know in order to create the space that needs to be created for this work to happen.
Will you be leading it, Aisha?
I will.
You'll be doing it. So because
oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, because we most likely will have to do it in a public forum, it's going to be recorded. So I'll have that recording that I'll be able to share with incoming, people and have them watch it. So that's terrific.
Great.
And thank you.
This isn't a conversation that we have to have now. This thought popped in my head and it's just something I'm going to throw out there for us to think a little bit more about later. And when I say later, we're going to blink and it's going to be this time of year again of, do we need to add an equity component to camp training?
Yeah.
Is that something that we should be doing too?
Yeah.
Let's think more on that as that wonderful time of year comes closer and closer. So dark, so early already. Okay. I'm really excited to go through some more training. I have not done as much as I would like in the last couple of years. Anything else on training? Okay. We will table dividing up the remainder of the ordinances to be rewritten for some future meeting at some point. Which brings us to new business, which is the update from the October meeting. So Natalie has watched the recording. Aisha and I were both there. I don't know if Andrew was there, but I did have a chance to give him and just let him know about the meeting essentially not running, and two commissioners, saying that they're not going to be attending meetings moving forward if they're going to be held virtually. So just to update, I guess both Aisha and Andrew, which I'm not sure if you can hear me, but Matt Mitchell, the president of the board, did send out an email today saying that the preference is for the meetings to remain virtual. Ooh, excellent. Andrew is listening. The meetings are going to remain virtual for the rest of the calendar year. Reassessment will be done in January. So in terms of whether or not those two commissioners are going to be attending, as far as we know, unless Natalie has any new information, they will not be, as according to what they said in the meeting last time. So just to be really clear, for if anyone's watching this and doesn't quite understand, one of the reasons why the meeting could not continue was that there was no longer a quorum. There was only 4 commissioners present. 2 were decided not to participate. And the 2 that were remaining could not, continue the meeting. One other thing I do want to point out is that according to the Park District's lawyer, Matt Mitchell, who is the president of the board, has the legal authority to make decisions on his own, whether or not the meetings are going to be held virtually. As Aisha had said in my conversation with her yesterday, I think it's really wonderful of Matt Mitchell to have asked not only the commissioners how they feel about meeting in person, but also those of us who attend meetings. I think that was a very kind and generous thing for him to do, to make sure that he was including our opinions, since our health and our family's health are really the ones that are going to be impacted by this. So I just wanted to say thank you to him also for doing that. And I do have a question for the committee, and without Elaine or Rogers being here, I don't really know if we want to come to a final decision, but I was curious how the committee felt in terms of being the chair of this committee, and Aisha having set aside time to have attended the meeting and have the meeting not run felt very disrespectful. I, as a constituent, I am angry that there's commissioners who are choosing not to participate. I'm particularly frustrated that this conversation wasn't had in a public space. The email that apparently made Rogers decide he didn't want to participate in the meetings anymore was just between him and Mitchell. And so the rest of us don't even know what that conversation was or why decisions are being made on either end, which I don't appreciate either. I feel like that's a conversation that should have been had in open space with all of us that are impacted by this decision participating in that. But so the question that I throw out to the committee is, what do we want to do, moving forward? We have work to get done. We have been stalled so many times in the short amount of time that we have been a committee. So in terms of continuing our work, there's absolutely no question that we need to keep moving forward and, trying to get as much of this done as efficiently as we can. But I did want to know how the rest of the committee felt in terms of, addressing these issues with the board. It's essentially making it that the board's not functioning. And that impacts our work as a committee, how we should approach that moving forward.
Can I just quickly say one thing? Aisha, I just wanted to say thank you for coming to the board meeting and for setting out time in your night to do that. And thank you for your patience with us. And I can speak for myself. I'm really sorry that happened. JC, obviously, thank you to you as well. We get to see you every month, and that's great. But again, I'm sorry that you also weren't able to deliver the reports that you had prepared and get to have the conversations that you were ready to have. So that was disappointing for me to find out. Yeah.
Yeah, agreed. Thank you. I appreciate that.
And then also just to offer a little bit of clarity, you guys might already know this, but if 2 commissioners, we have a board of 5. So if 2 commissioners choose not to participate, as we will still have a quorum as long as the other 3 commissioners are able to come, and they will be able to take action as long as they have 3 yes votes. So it's not a situation where two can vote yes and one no, and it will pass. All three of them will have to vote because it's a quorum of three, and we're missing two of the other commissioners. So action still can take place in meetings. If you're bringing recommendations to the meetings, they can still get passed, assuming that all three of the commissioners vote to move it forward. If they don't, that just simply means it'll remain on the agenda until the next month when we have the full board there.
Oh, thank you for adding that last piece. That piece I didn't know. That like if it doesn't pass, then it just kind of sits there until there's a full board present. That's good to know.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I mean, I feel like I've said my piece. I think that I would really like to hear back from Andrew and from Elaine, you know, who's not here tonight, before I would say anything to the board about anything. So we can, you know, have that conversation later. And, you know, it also very much depends on how the board meeting goes in November. I really do sincerely hope that it is a full board and we can get back to learning how to work together. Bless you. Yeah, just moving on to the ordinances would be really nice. Those poor ordinances have been waiting for us for a long time. Anything else on update from the board meeting from October? Okay. That brings us to call of the committee. Does anybody have anything that they would like to share? Yes, Natalie.
I do. We will have 3 seats up for election in the April election. And now is the time for potential candidates to start collecting signatures. So candidates need a certain percentage of the amount of voters, ballots cast from the last election cycle. So the math on that is 65. So they need 65 signatures. I'm our local election official, so I can print the petitions for you. I can give you the candidate guide. I can give you our little write-up of what it means to be a commissioner in terms of responsibility and obligation, and a timeline of when everything happens and is due. So now is the time for recruitment. Myself and Commissioner Mitchell are doing a board diversification and recruitment workshop with the YW right now. It's 4 Tuesdays. We just had our second Tuesday session. It's been incredibly useful. I've learned quite a bit. I think they've made some really excellent points about diversifying your board and expectations for board members joining you. So happy to get into that later, but anyway, it's been really useful. So I just wanted to let y'all know now's the time. Tell your friends, friends, and let's get some candidates.
I'm assuming you've already like posted on Facebook and all that.
Yes, it's been in our newsletters. It's on the website. I put it in the Evanston Roundtable. I've sent emails out about it. Some of the things that we learned about this week are some other outreach tools to reach people, like kind of target different demographics within your community. They gave us a survey to send to all of our board members to collect their demographic information. The point they made is you don't really know what you're missing until you know what you have. And it was a pretty thorough demographic data. So they're going to make that available to us. Yeah, so it's great. It's been a really great workshop, posting in lots of different places, have some more ideas for the weeks ahead, but I'm happy to help. If anybody has questions, just give me my cell phone number. Happy to walk them through it.
Have you posted on LinkedIn? Doesn't LinkedIn have a specific spot for board positions?
I have not. I'm not super savvy with the old LinkedIn. I have one, but I've never used it.
I'm not either. My resume is not even updated. I don't even know.
I feel like every time I log in, I get 10 emails that are like, "Are you looking for a job?"
Right.
It
I
gives me
believe,
anxiety.
if I'm not mistaken, you can go on there and list places that want board positions, but I don't know if it's specific to nonprofits, right? Because an elected board position is different.
It is different, and we're talking about those differences in this workshop series. I think the prospect of running a campaign is a little daunting. I will make it very easy. I will make it very friendly, user friendly. So if you come across folks and that seems to be a concern, totally legitimate, I understand, and I will do my best to make it painless.
Um, is this also the type of thing like, would it be helpful if I left flyers or like stuff at like the library and stuff?
Yeah, I have one. I've made one.
Okay, I will come pick some up from you and I will do some posting up of things.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's it.
Natalie,
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Natalie, I just wanted to add that if we do have any candidates, I think as we're looking hopefully to diversify the board, if there are any candidates who come through, I don't know, is it possible to give like contact? I mean, I'd be happy to volunteer for certain people to get help them get signatures. I don't know if that's possible to coordinate in some way, but if it is, maybe you and I can exchange an email or something.
Yeah, I have to stay nonpartisan, so I don't know how much I can help with that, but I'm sure, but I can call IAPD maybe and figure out if there's like, if it's okay for me to at least like connect candidates with you.
Okay, great. Okay, thanks.
Yeah. I'll see if I get an answer to that.
That was a question that I had in terms of us too, right? Like how bound we aren't bound by the same rules you are, right? Because you have those rules because you're the election official, correct? Not because you're a park district employee.
Both.
Both, of course,
Mhm.
both. That kind of, does that put me in murky water? Being like a paid person because I'm not like full staff?
I think if you're like wearing your Ridgeville shirt and running a workshop in that hour and a half or 4 hours, you have to remain nonpartisan. But I think outside of that space, because you're a seasonal staff member, I think there's a separation of that for you. Because you're also a citizen, like you're also a constituent. So you would be voting, right? So,
Yes,
you know, I think, yeah, so you get to, I think you have that privilege. I don't know that I do as a full-time, like as a permanent full-time administrative person. I know that I'm a little bit limited. And also as a local election official, I have to, and I would, of course, but I would afford that same assistance to anybody that walks in the door and wants to run, right? So, but I don't think I can go as far as to like help them collect signatures, or like, I'm not sure. I'll find out if I can connect them with people who can help.
Okay.
Anyway, I think you and I are different in that regard.
Okay. I want to make sure I don't get myself in trouble. I just wanted to say real fast. First of all, I wanted to thank you all. This has been a long meeting. But I also wanted to say, I had shared this with Natalie the other day. I did a workshop for my for my preschool, based on talking about gender and such in the classroom with preschoolers. And so I took what I learned and I brought it to the half-day workshop the other day. And I was really excited because I hadn't put two and two together that there was a good handful of kindergartners in the workshop. And District 65 talks about pronouns. They talk about, all that sort of stuff in their curriculum. But it is so early in the school year that there was this handful of kids that at least a couple of them clearly had never been exposed to this concept before. And so I took what I learned in my workshop and it worked really well. So I just wanted to share it with you all. So either working with younger kids, or it also works with adults who have a hard time kind of understanding this concept. Instead of explaining to somebody, you know, these, or I should say, in addition to explaining to somebody what your pronouns are, you can explain to them, you know, if you would like to refer to me without using my name, you can say, she's really funny. She enjoys doing DEI work. And that gave the kids who didn't understand what pronouns were, it gave them the example of what to use. I did have a little mishap last year where I did misgender a child because of an error that I made. And so I really wanted to make a point this year of not repeating that mistake. And I was really excited to be able to apply what I had learned. And I wanted to share that little tidbit with all of you, because it worked really well. There were a couple kids that were, I mean, they were a little confused, like looking around, like, why are we having this conversation? But they were able to understand what the other kids were saying and were able to fit their pieces in there too. And I was really proud that for some of those kids, they had that first experience at Ridgeville. Just wanted to share. Anyone else have anything for call committee? Are we all good to go? Fantastic. Thank you all so much. I appreciate your extra time today, and I am looking forward to getting some more stuff done in our next few meetings. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Right.